Tip number 4, and this one is going to make a lot of people angry. When you start your podcast, do not. Hi, my name is Baciocco. I'm a puppeteer and creator who's been podcasting since 2004. And on this channel, I talk about creativity and my thoughts on creativity. Today, we're talking about podcasting and my top 4 tips for new podcasters. In 2018, I was inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. I don't know how that happened. I am not a famous podcaster, but I have been a podcaster since the very beginning. I started my first podcast, The Radio Adventures of Dr. Floyd, in November of 2004, and I have been podcasting every year since. So I've been in this well over 20 years. I think podcasting is a great medium and I love to help people get into podcasting. So I thought I would do a video on my top 4 tips for brand new podcasters. All right, let's start with tip number 4. And this one is going to make some newbie wannabe podcasters a little bit upset. When you start your podcast, do not think about monetization. Think about making a good show. Monetization does not matter when you are making your first episodes of your podcast. Sure, it's a nice thing to think about. Oh, wouldn't it be great if down the road we could get some ads in here? Yeah, that's great to think about, but don't worry about it. Don't go after it. Don't start chasing down brand deals if you haven't even put out your first podcast. When you start your podcast, the number one thing you should concentrate on is creating a good show, whatever that means to you, but don't worry about monetization. And I see a lot of podcasters sometimes on Reddit going, well, I'm starting a podcast, and what do you think about this about monetization? No, don't think about monetization. Think about creating a good show. That's tip number 4. Tip number 3 is something that we did on the Radio Adventures of Dr. Floyd. Use the equipment that you have right now and just get started. When we started the Radio Adventures of Dr. Floyd, all I had was a Power Mac computer and a Shure M58 microphone. And in fact, Doug Price, who recorded the voice of Dr. Floyd, was recording his lines out in Florida on his PC computer on a Radio Shack microphone. We did not wait until we got just the right microphone or just the right recording equipment. We used what we had and we just got started. Right now, you probably have a phone and that phone has a voice memo thing. Start your podcast. Start it right there. Now, it depends on what kind of podcast you want to do, but you have the equipment or you have some equipment right now where you can get started. We used that Shure M58 and that Radio Shack microphone, I think, for the first season and a half of the Radio Adventures of Dr. Floyd. And then I just decided after we had done I don't know, about 20 episodes, I was like, well, we probably should get a nicer microphone. So don't worry about your equipment. Use the equipment you have right now and just get started. All right, here's number 2. Have 4 episodes of your podcast completed and ready to go out before you put out your first podcast. This is one of my very, very big tips for doing podcasting and keeping you podcasting, is that you should have at least 4. If you could do more than 4, have more than 4 done. Because what will happen is you will start releasing your podcasts and you will be ahead. If your podcast is weekly, if your podcast is monthly, having a bunch of them already done is a weight off your shoulders because you won't be like, oh my gosh, it's Monday morning and we have an episode due this week. When we started the Radio Adventures of Dr. Floyd, we had about 20 episodes done before we put out our first one, which meant we broadcasted or podcasted our first season while we were still making the final episodes of season 2. And then while those episodes were being podcast, we were already making episodes for season 3. So get ahead of yourself, stay ahead, and have at least 4 or more episodes done before you put out your first episode. Now, that kind of depends on what the show you were doing. If you are doing a show that is dependent on current events or it's a news show, what's happening, you kind of can't do that because you got to talk about what's happening on that day and following the trends. But if you're doing a show that is not dependent on current events, get 4 of them in the can, ready to go before you put out your first one. And then when you put out your first one, start working on the 5th one. All right, here is my number 1 tip for new podcasters. If you want to grow your podcast and you want to build an audience, pick a release schedule and stick to it. and be upfront and clear with your audience what that release schedule is. Now, your release schedule can be weekly, it can be monthly, it could be yearly. I do a podcast that I only do for 25 days in December, but people still tune into it because they know that for those 25 days in December, I'm going to be doing that podcast. So pick a schedule and stick to it. When we started the Radio Adventures of Dr. Floyd, we had all these episodes in a can, and we started releasing them weekly. Well, we didn't stay ahead, and eventually the release of those episodes caught up to us, and the first week we missed putting something out, we got emails. People were saying, "Where's the episode? Where's the new episode?" Because we had built up the trust of the folks who were listening that our episodes would be released once a week. So pick a schedule and stick to it. That is the number one way to build an audience with podcasting. And once you've built up that audience, then you can start thinking about monetization. Well, those are my top 4 tips for brand new podcasters. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Get out there, start a podcast, get creating, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.